N Jha, Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Government of India, Sayalee Gankar, and Shri Ajay N Jha, President, Coal Preparation Society of India, to kindly come up on the stage. This session will be a presentation and discussion on introduction to sustainable development and environmental challenges, extractive industry. Under this, environment and biodiversity, Paris Climate Accord, prospering business while addressing environment challenges, waste management will be discussed. Now, can I have Mr. R.K. Sharma to kindly felicitate our guests? Mr. R.K. Sharma, can I have you on the dais please to kindly felicitate our guests? It is my honor to welcome Shri Ajay N Jha, Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Government of India, to this event. A big round of applause for him, please. Thank you so much, sir. Now, I would like to invite Mr. R.K. Sharma to kindly felicitate Dr.Pradipto Ghosh, Distinguished Fellow, TEDdy. A big round of applause for him, please. Thank you, Mr. Sharma. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Ajay Jha to kindly welcome Ms. Sayalee Gankar to this event. Mr. Ajay Jha, can I have you on the dais, please? A big round of applause for ma'am, please. It's my honor to welcome Shri R.K. Sachdev, President, Coal Preparation Society of India, to this national summit. we would like to present a memento to all our dignitaries present on the dais. A compendium on extractive industries and sustainable development, authored by Mr. Saurabh Mittal and Ms. Harsha Mukherjee. Dr.Pradipto Ghosh, Distinguished Fellow, Delhi. A former Secretary, Ministry of Environment and Forests. Presently, he is a member of the Scientific Advisory Council of the Cabinet and Governing Council of the Indian Council of Social Science Research. He has earlier been a member of the NSA Board, PM's Council on Climate Change, G20 Advisory Group of the Ministry of Finance, and CAG's Audit Advisory Committee. We welcome you to the event, sir. It's my honor to welcome sir on the dais for his address.
Good afternoon, and let me begin by thanking the organizers, that is the International Institute of Corporate Sustainability and Responsibility and the Asian Institute of Management, New Delhi, besides the sponsors, for very kindly inviting me to participate in this event. The theme of this session is focused on sustainability and extractive industries. So let me just briefly make some observations, and then I will request the other participants to make their presentations. As you fly in to land at Delhi airport, very often you might have seen a stretch of more or less barren land. It's very stony, barren land, but it is pockmarked with craters in which you can see there is some water, some accumulated rainwater. And these pockmarked craters are distributed very haphazardly around that entire area. Now, what's the background to this? It is that because of the construction requirements in the national capital region, there has been a lot of illegal quarrying in that area. And as the illegal quarriers extracted the rock, they just moved on and created another crater, and in course of time the old crater filled up with rainwater, and of course nature does not keep anything sterile for very long. Soon enough there was an ecosystem which developed in these areas. So if you look at the water, it is green in color. But basically it is a disfigurement of the landscape, and it presents zero or negative value to society. Now supposing that the same quarrying had been done in a systematic manner with a proper mining plan, then we would have quarried contiguous areas, and over time we could have developed a proper water body which could have been a very valuable area for recreation, as a freshwater source to the surrounding villages, and maybe even a source of livelihoods through fishing and so on. So this is an example of what irresponsible, and in this case of course illegal quarrying, that the kind of problems that can result in. But it also points to the potential of sustainable mining and quarrying. Basically, I will present this as an example that realizing sustainability does not need to be a net drain on your company's revenues, in a sense unproductive, economically unproductive capital expenditure, or that it needs to be addressed by small amounts of money through CSR. I will give some of the examples to show that it is entirely possible to address the environmental impacts of mining and quarrying, to realize positive revenue streams to the companies concerned. Now, in many mines, once the ore has been extracted, there is requirement for backfilling. And many of these mines are located not very far from the steel plants. The steel plants require bulk quantities of iron ore, limestone, coal, maybe manganese, and these mines require backfilling. Now these steel plants, they have hundreds of hectares which have been degraded through over the millions of years, over the last several decades, with hundreds of millions of tons of steel plant slag. So the land has gone waste, and this is a resource which could very easily be used for mine backfilling. In the process, the steel plants would pay a revenue to the mines which use this steel plant slag, and they would be able to recover this land and put it to valuable use. Now, many of the coal sector operations, particularly like Coal India, they have undertaken afforestation over the mines which have been exhausted. But very often they have utilized species which don't present any particular value either to the company or to the local villagers or to the local communities. It is entirely possible to undertake this kind of afforestation through focusing on species which can provide a revenue stream for the future to the companies as well as provide benefits to the local communities. And there are indeed many such possibilities. Now let me switch gears at this point and turn to the question of biodiversity conservation. And many of the mining areas in dense, old growth natural forests involve the destruction of biodiversity. And very often people throw up their hands and say, well, there's nothing that we can do. We need the coal, we need the limestone, so biodiversity has to be sacrificed. Too bad. Unfortunately, biodiversity has an extremely important role to play in ensuring the stability of the ecosystem. An ecosystem which is essentially has very little species diversity cannot withstand an environmental shock, like for example an extreme drought or an extreme heat wave. And then of course the soil becomes completely degraded. The rivers which originate from that system, they run dry in perpetuity. And this indeed is the case with the highlands of the Deccan Plateau in this country. So all the rivers in peninsular India, talking of Kaveri, Narmada, Tapti and Mahanadi and so on, they arise in the highlands of the Deccan Plateau, which represent very rich biodiversity. And indeed, it is important that we have to refrain from trying to source low value minerals. It's a different matter that if we are sourcing strategic minerals or extremely valuable minerals like rare earths and so on. Well, that's a different issue, and probably it's only relatively small quantities and small areas that would need to be integrated. But if you are going to extract limestone, if you are going to extract coal with 45% ash, is it worthwhile degrading these vast areas of landscape and putting at risk vital life support ecosystems in order to accomplish the extraction of low value minerals from sources which will last a couple of decades at most? But the environmental impacts, the livelihood impacts on the people dependent on the rivers will be in perpetuity. Let me make one plea, and that is that whenever a clearance of an environmental appraisal is following environmental appraisal is given for a project, it is accompanied by an environmental management plan. It is up to the project proponents to prepare the environmental management plan, and the job of the regulator is to see whether it addresses environmental concerns. Now here I would suggest that given the possibilities of realizing revenue streams for your company, of realizing economic and livelihood benefits for the surrounding communities, that you use some imagination in preparing these environmental management plans, so that you focus not simply on addressing the environmental impacts which are revealed by the environmental appraisal, by the EIA, but that you also focus on among the different options which are available, which are economically feasible, which are technically feasible, that you look at these options to see that you also realize the maximum economic benefits for yourselves, as well as maximize the environment, the ecological, livelihood and social benefits of the surrounding communities. Of course, the point is that when you develop these environmental management plans, the capital expenditure, the O&M expenditure has to be an integral part of your project costs. It cannot be something which stands outside the project, the detailed project report. It's not something that you would simply source CSR funds for addressing this. CSR is useful, but up to a point. CSR can address marginal questions. But my point is that many extractive industries involve significant mainly adverse environmental impacts. This need not be so that one can use the opportunity presented by this problem to actually maximize both economic benefits for yourself and for society as well. Of course, this will require policy support from the government, policy and regulatory support from the government. But then, of course, it is up to the industry to make the concerned ministries and departments of the government aware of these possibilities and ask for a facilitated policy and regulatory environment to enable them to accomplish this. Thank you very much indeed. So I have to say this.
Thank you so much, sir. Now we have Shri Ajay N Jha, Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Government of India. Mr. Ajay joined Indian Administrative Services in 1982 and is from Manipur, Tripura, Kedah. He has managed election in India for 6 consecutive years. He has interests in Hindi film music and is a keen sports person and plays games such as football, tennis and cricket. He has held various positions in the government across ministries like HR Ministry, Ministry of Finance as Special Secretary Chairman, 14th Finance Commission. We welcome you, sir. Now I would like to invite Mr. Jha on the dais to kindly welcome the gathering.
Mr. Pradipto Ghosh, my very, very distinguished predecessor several years ago as a Secretary Environment and still very active in the sphere of policy making and looking at environmental issues. Mr. R.K. Sachdev, Sayalee Gankar, very distinguished invitees and participants in today's workshop. It's a pleasure for me to be here today in this session on which has been arranged by the Institute of Sustainable Corporate Sustainable Responsibility on a particular topic of sustainable development and environmental challenges with reference to extractive industries. Dr. Ghosh in his introductory statement has very succinctly captured the various aspects of sustainability that we have to look at, especially in terms of managing our environment, both in terms of the economic activity that is carried out, the overall responsibility to maintain biodiversity, and the concurrent responsibility which project proponents have towards environment. The concept of sustainable development is now widely used in many areas of activities related to the life of man. And it came as a reaction primarily to the dynamic growth seen in many countries around the world, which led to the excessively intensive and uncontrolled use of natural resources. We have a sustainability development goal, which was agreed to upon by all countries of the world under the platform of the United Nations in 2015 September, which has set a broad sustainability agenda which lays emphasis on balanced growth based on the three pillars of sustainable development, that is economic growth, social development, and environmental protection. It's interesting to note that in whichever way you look at sustainable development, these three pillars have to converge and play together. It cannot be one at the cost of the other. India as a country has fully committed itself to the path of sustainable growth and keeping this path to prosperity as we progress further. Most of these sustainable development goals are also mirrored in the nationally determined contributions that we have set out as part of the Paris Agreement, which was ratified last year on 2nd October, and it was agreed to upon by all countries of the world in December 2015. I would just like to flag a few facts which are emerged as part of recent analysis. One is this, that India is one of the main leading countries facing one of the highest resource extraction pressures in the world. Our extraction pressure is 1,579 tons per acre compared to the global average of 454 tons. In 2009, India was the third largest consumer of materials next to China and the United States. And further, as we grow, it will put more and more pressure on our resources as we head towards a faster rate of development and growth in our country. Carving this sustainable development future demands calls for new initiatives. And that is, how do we use the natural resources more efficiently and more productively for our future generations. It is important to reduce global materials use, or if not, at least stabilization at present levels of demand, which calls for major reductions in metabolic rates, especially in Asia Pacific region accounting for more than 50% of the population, global population. And this can only be achieved if we focus more and more on resource efficiency throughout the material life, that is, the cycle of extraction, design, manufacturing, consumption, with special emphasis on resource-intensive industries and their extraction practices. One of the